What's up, guys? Mr. Dan here, back again with another Hammer horror review. Most of the Hammer films that I've reviewed on this channel have been some of the early crime dramas. I've given some short reviews of some of the compilations. Just when I reviewed these two sets, this one and the other one that has 5 films, I gave a little mini review of each of the films. That's divided up into 3 parts, but I don't know if I've ever given a standalone review of any of their horror films. I've actually done one of their non-horror films. Didn't get that many views. Maybe that'll be better for after October when Halloween's over. So yeah, but today we're strictly horror. Today's film we're going to review is The Brides of Dracula, starring Peter Cushing. There you go. You see him there, which I have on this 8-film Hammer horror series. Very good compilation of Hammer films. And I'll show you the back in a moment. But this is the second film in the Dracula series. It should be noted, however, it does not feature Dracula. Christopher Lee was in the first film, The Horror of Dracula. He will return in subsequent films, whether he speaks or not. He's always a pleasure to watch. I do find it interesting that they have a different vampire in this, and I kind of like it. Now, if there were only 2 films, I might have a different opinion. I might be like, oh, I wish Christopher Lee came back. But you do have a variety of Dracula and vampire films in Hammer. Here's another one, The Kiss of the Vampire, with a very different type of vampire. That's not related to the Dracula series. So I kind of like that, and I kind of wish, hypothetically, it would have been great if some of these different vampires existed in the same universe, or at least got to appear. I mean, the vampire in this film, Baron Meinster and Dracula, do appear in the same universe because they're both Peter Cushing as Van Helsing gets to battle both of them, but they never actually meet each other. I don't know if that's really spoiling anything, but that would have been cool to see the different vampires interact with each other. I'm sure Dracula would have tried to assert his dominance. That would have been a cool thing to see. Having said that, I like the fact that we have a different type of vampire in this. He's played by David Peel. And, you know, you guys know that Jason and Joe, Horrific Nightmares JM, and Joe, the Horror Man, did September in September, where they reviewed a different Hammer film every day, and then they ranked them just last Friday. It was really interesting. They had a nice mix of older and newer films. And they both said they were surprised that The Horror of Dracula, the original Dracula film, wasn't higher on their list. And, you know, you think, well, it's a classic. It's got Christopher Lee, and it's the first Hammer Dracula film. And I kind of felt the same way when I rewatched it with my son. I enjoyed it. It's got a great ending, fantastic ending. And one of the things about the series is they have to keep finding ways to, as Brad from Bronco Juggalo has pointed out, that great YouTube channel also, he's reviewed many of the Dracula films. They keep coming up with a new way to resurrect Dracula in the films where he does come back, and also to kill him, rather than just like another stake through the heart. So, you know, they do a lot of interesting things in this film, and they're able to, this film was written by Jimmy Sangster, one of the great writers for Hammer, and also just for film and television in general. And he was able to basically have freedom to do something different, where when you think about it, the original Dracula series, even though they changed things around and they swap names and they make Mina and the other girl the same person, and Jonathan Harker's a librarian and then he's an accountant, and they switch things around. It's pretty much the same story. So watching a Dracula film, it's almost like a technical exercise at this point for me. Now here's a spoiler. I haven't showed this yet, but I've got a pretty big haul video coming up. So I finally got this used, and I've never seen it. So do I think it's going to be the greatest movie ever? No. Do I think it's going to be the greatest Dracula movie ever? Probably not. But it's got Frank Langella, Laurence Olivier, Donald Pleasance, Kate Nelligan, so I'm sure I'll enjoy it on a level. You see what I'm saying? But with Brides of Dracula, they're able to really get creative, and I really think this is a great follow-up. And basically, real quick, I'll show you the inside. Here's the description here. I'm not crazy about this brown on the black. My eyeballs can barely see that. But there's one of the brides of Dracula, not really of Dracula, but of a guy named Baron Meinster. And this film stars Yvonne Monlaire, one of the the three gorgeous and beautiful Yvonnes that worked on Hammer films. And I did watch the trailer for this, and I couldn't believe it. They said that they introduced her as the next French sex kitten. So, I mean, that's the angle they were pushing. Now, she's quite attractive, but she's actually, it's kind of she's kind of prim and proper, to be honest with you, in the film. She's basically traveling across Eastern Europe from Paris to take a teaching position at an all-girls school. And she gets stranded at an inn after the stagecoach decides to take off. As we've seen in other, that goes all the way back to Nosferatu, the nervous stagecoach drivers. The couple at the inn are very sort of sympathetic to her being stranded there, but then in walks this woman, the Baroness, the mother of Baron Munster, who befriends the young lady and says, well, why don't you come back, stay at my place? It's a lot more comfortable. So they go back, they have dinner, or at least she has dinner. The Baroness says, oh, I'm not hungry. She's only drinking red wine. And soon this young lady, Marianne, learns that she has a son who is chained up, and he's played by David Peel. And at first she says, I'm sorry, I lied to you. It's for his own protection, he's sick. Well, he gets out somehow, and I'll leave it to your imagination, and he's a vampire, and he turns a lot of the local schoolgirls and some of the other ladies in town into vampires. They've always got this little posse of female vampires that they convert. And luckily, Van Helsing arrives in town and combats the vampire. And it's basically just a very good story. It's just a very good film. Great atmosphere. This is directed by Terence Fisher, the great Terence Fisher, one of the premier director of horror films for Hammer. Cushing is customarily great. There's a very interesting scene where he has to deal with a bite, something that hadn't really been done before, and a fantastic ending. There's plenty of staking along the way, but the ending is really interesting. Fun fact about the ending, my local station didn't get Hammer films, and I recently read a book about our local horror host, Dr. Shock, and it had a list of every movie that they ever showed, and there's no Hammer films in there, and they explained that that package was a little bit too expensive for them. Somehow, I saw this, because I do remember the ending. For years, I was like, it involves a windmill, and for years, I was like, what movie was that? And I wasn't sure if it was a Dracula movie or what. And the first time I rewatched this years ago as an adult, I was so happy to finally find it. But it's a very good ending, very solid film overall. Highly recommend it. You've got one bat in here, which actually looks pretty good. It's like an oversized bat, and the flying around is often a little bit goofy, as is customary in these films, but it's not as bad in this film, and the actual bat itself doesn't look too bad. Better than a lot of the other films. Certainly better than the bats in The Kiss of the Vampire, which were purchased from Woolworth's True Story. And I like the fact that David Peel plays a different kind of vampire. By the way, he was a little bit on the short side, so he put lifts in his shoes. You're not going to be as menacing as Christopher Lee. You're not going to do that. It's just not going to happen. Okay. Dickie Owen as the Mummy in Curse of the Mummy's Tomb couldn't do it. He couldn't replace Christopher Lee, and David Peel doesn't quite replace him. But he does play a different type of vampire, and he does a really good job, I think. I really liked his performance. So once again, very solid vampire film, and highly recommend it. It really is a very good film, and it's probably gotten, in my estimation, it's risen up in the ranks every time I watch it. Whereas I think the point Jason and Joe made about the original, the horror of Dracula, it's just we know the story and fantastic ending, but this one just seems to move along better, and we know that the Bram Stoker story, or at least that version of it, this one just moves along very well paced. And just a reminder, on Thursday, the 19th of October, I will be on the Good Movies podcast, which there is a separate channel for the Good Movies podcast. But I believe right now they are posting those to the Low IQ Media channel first. And eventually the idea is to build up the subscription, the connections on the Good Movies podcast channel. But come on out, meet the fellas. They were nice enough to invite me on, and we're going to be talking about Hammer films, and it's going to be a great time. If you're seeing this, a few weeks or months or years down the road, you want to go back and check it out. I'm sure it'll be an illuminating discussion as we take a deep dive into Hammer movies. See you then. Highly recommend it. Check it out, and I'll talk to you guys later. Thanks a lot. Have you seen The Brides of Dracula? Which one is your favorite Dracula? Or if you haven't seen any of these Hammer Dracula films, which Dracula overall is your favorite? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks.